Welcome back to another Panzer Tactics tutorial. This one I am going to continue on with my indirect fire tutorial that I put together for the first one. And this one's going to be a little bit more advanced and a few little corrections that I have for this as well. Thank you to my subscribers for pointing things out that I misaligned as part of my first discussion. For the most part, it's correct, but I drifted myself into some advanced features that I was going to talk about in this video that I started going a little bit too far on the first video. So anyways, I'm going to make that correct because I got a little bit more comprehensive example here to show of everything here with this particular video. So what we're going to look at with this is we're going to look at some more of the specific advanced features here. We saw the process of actually calling in artillery, doing called fire. But I want to talk a little bit more about barrage fire. That's one thing I want to set the record straight on. Also, moving in the sheath. Those are two things. This one's a little bit more difficult to understand. There's a lot of discussion around this. We'll talk a little bit more on that. Also talking about other called-in fire activities, such as continuing the fire or continuous fire, adjusting and checked, because this is very important. This is one I've seen checked get missed a couple times in some of the nuances of how it works. Also danger close and planned fire. I want to talk about that here as well. And then I'm thinking I will also probably do a third video under indirect fire and also incorporate some of the optional things for that. Don't necessarily need to use, but I'll just show you what those look like. So anyways, for this one, we're going to concentrate on this here now. So let's move forward with this. And the first thing I just want to bring us back to in my little sticky notes is this. Is just going back to what the fire is and the different things that you need, the commands, the observers, level of attachment, the sheath, type of fire, and then the actual fire response, and then fire resolution. Those were the basic things that we had in there. And that's not going to change. That's always going to be the way that indirect fire is going to be achieved. There's just a few things here with some of the idiosyncrasies of the indirect fire that we'll do, as well as we'll see planned fire, which is a little variation on the called fire over there as well. But I just want to point out that this is the same thing I went over in the first video, is going to be the same thing for all of our fire. So let's come back to a example here again. Now I've changed around my little example here. We're still using our same thing. We've got our forward observer over here. We've got a 25-pounder here, which I've moved before he was back and he was showing us onboard artillery. Now he's actually in a direct fire role. That's going to be important here in a few moments. Now at the moment he is unspotted by the German Panzer PzIIIJ over here. Because he is in rough terrain and he hasn't fired, he hasn't done anything. So, given that he is just a regular gun over here in terms of size, he's an S, he's a small. So, given that he is pretty much not seen yet because he hasn't fired. So that's good because he will be firing here in a little bit. We've got our hapless, well, not hapless, but our German tank over here was going to be the subject of all of this firing. Remarkably, he'll survive through most of it, to point out my example. But we've got our Panzer PzIIIJ over here. Now, the one thing that is a little bit different, you notice the ranges has closed a little bit. So let's just take a look at those. So the range between our forward observer and the tank is only 8 hexes. And the range from the anti-tank gun to that is also 8 hexes. So we're dealing with a much closer range, 800 meters roughly, between the two of them. The tank is moving. That's why we got the green spot over here. So he will be essentially spotted, but all the others, as we said, will will not be spotted. So let's go through and kind of go through the game turn with this. We've done the spotting. Next thing is going to be the commands. Our forward observer is going to have our usual commands. Let's see, markers. There we go. And we'll go for the no snap and overwatch. So I'm going to put my overwatch marker over there on our forward observer, because we will also have, I should note, we will also have for our offboard artillery, and not that chart, we will be having a light, we're going to be using the light artillery battery for the battery for the forward observer. Okay. We've also got our 25 pounder over here. He's also going to, for the sake of discussion or example, he's also going to have an overwatch. Sure, I could put a fire on him, but I'm going to use overwatch because I do want to illustrate some moving here as well. And our good old target is, he's going to have a move. Our Panzer PzIIIJ is going to, a J is going to have a move marker on there. Okay, so there's our commands. So for the sake of initiative, we're going to have the British over here win the initiative. And what that means is, if I bring up my chart, this chart now, what that's going to mean is that our British player is going to be the first player. Okay, because we're saying they won the initiative. So going right into the combat phase, indirect fire is first, as we saw before. So being the first player, they're going to be able to shoot first. So the forward observer is going to reveal actually, and say he's going to actually shoot that offboard artillery at this unit over here. So we've already seen he's a forward observer. We're going to have, we'll call them attached. I didn't specify what the attachment level, but that would be scenario specific. But they're going to be attached, and they're going to be firing at our unit over here. So that's our target. So again, we're going to look back on our charts over here for our artillery and see what our response is going to be. Now, this, of course, is going to be GP. It's not going to be smoke or anything like that. So we're going to see forward observer, they're attached, so it's going to be a 2. Then we'll just double check our modifiers, and I don't see any modifiers there, so it's going to be a 2. So let's just, for safety's sake, say he does roll a 2 or greater. So now we're going to get our markers and place our, where is it? That's not it. I think it was back under here. Yeah, British impact marker. Oh, there we go. Is going to come in like this. Okay, and we're going to resolve our artillery. Now this is where I'm going to start some of my corrections here. First off, now the artillery will come in, and what we're looking at is the light batteries, the range of 8 from the observer, remember. So it's going to be short range, so they're going to be a 6 on the firepower column. And then the Panzer PzIIIJ, oops, I shouldn't have closed that. There we go. It's going to be a 2A for a defense. So it's going to be a 6 to 2 with an A, meaning there's going to be your -20 for the armored vehicle. Now we've also got a moving vehicle, which will expose this to show that. There we go. So we're going to have a -20 for the moving, and then we're going to have another -20 for a A-type vehicle. Now what I didn't specify was my sheaf pattern. If you remember from last time, we have sheaf patterns, open or closed. In this case, I'm going to create a closed pattern. We'll call it a closed pattern, which is just going to affect that hex and all hexes around it. So it's going to be a closed pattern. So what that means is that when we target it, it's just going to hit in those particular areas, and that's going to be important when it comes to the barrage effects as we go along here. So it's going to be basically -40 to our 6 against 2. Now you can see that our suppression was going to start at 35 and effective at 65, but with the minuses, that effectively goes up to 75 and 105. So effective fire, an effective hit with the fire is pretty much out of the question, but we can still suppress on a roughly 25% chance of a suppression on them there as well. Okay, so that's our artillery fire. I'm not going to actually resolve it on there. We'll just pretend that they missed for the sake of this example. That's where our impact is, and that's going to stay there. That impact marker stays on there because that's going to be important when we start going into our moving, which is going to be our next thing that we're going to do. Okay, now one thing I had misspoke before about, which I'm going to correct, is that the barrage open and close factor is not used on the effect of the fire when we're shooting right here. It's going to actually be used with our direct fire, our overwatch fire that we're going to do here in just 1 minute on here as well. So moving along here, we've got our move command on them. Them being the Panzer being German, which is the second player, they are actually going to move up the road. So they're going to move to here. Now a couple things are going to happen. Let's get our impact marker 100 here again. First thing, and this is in any order that the British want to do this, is we're going to have another attack on the Panzer IIIJ by the indirect fire, because as part of moving within the indirect fire, you actually take one more attack, but that's it. If this was an open sheaf and he moved into W4 over here, you would not be attacked. He only is attacked either in the initial attack or when they try to move out of or move into a hex within the sheaf. Okay, that's an important safety feature here. Now, if they actually moved into another hex of the sheaf, they wouldn't be attacked again. Or they moved out of the sheaf, they wouldn't be attacked again. Only for that first time it physically moves within the sheaf that they get attacked. So essentially, that's going to be a very similar attack. We're going to have the same type of thing. It's going to be the range to the target, which in this case is now 7, but it still falls within the limits, or actually does it? No, I'm sorry. I'm glad I checked. It's actually 7 now. I knew I set this up like this for a reason. Is a 7 now, so actually the attack becomes a little bit different. So this is going to be a 7 against a 2A, which now means it's going to be 31 and 62 for the suppression and the effectiveness of the attack. Now, the other thing is that the moving modifier is not used. The moving modifier is only used on the initial attack. Seems a little counterintuitive, but that is the way it is. And this is what's a little controversial, because 1, we're getting attacked twice, and then 2, the moving negative factor is not applied over here. So that one actually comes off. Of course, we'll still get our negative 20 for the armored tank. So now our effective attack is going to be a 51 to an 82, or an 18% chance to be effective, and a 49% chance of a suppression on there. Now, some people say, why do they need to get attacked twice? I mean, they've been attacked once already. If somebody was moving in, they would only be attacked once, and so forth and so on. I look at it kind of as double jeopardy for this unit, this poor unit. You know, it became the target of this whole thing, so that's really, you know, going to be harassed and pounded by it. So, you know, it's kind of like you've been targeted, so you're really going to be the brunt of the force coming in at it, you know, for this. Now, you may also say, well, if I had other units in different hexes over here and they still moved within the sheaf, they would still get attacked twice as well. Same type of principle. You know, they started within the sheaf, they were the target of the action, however it was going to happen, and so they get 2 attacks. It's just the way it is. So that's moving within the sheaf and how you're being attacked here as well. Now, I just want to throw this out as another little tip. Now this guy moved, and we potentially did this attack again. Let's say that it was a miss for the sake of argument. Of course, if it was effective or suppressed, all the associated things would happen. But now we've got this 25 pounder sitting over here in Overwatch, and now we're going to have him take a shot at him. So he's going to have a direct fire shot of 7 against this tank. All right, he can still do this while they're in the sheath like this. There's nothing restricting them from not shooting at units that are within the sheath. But when they do shoot at them within there, they're actually going to now apply this barrage modifier as a negative modifier to that shot. Okay, so if he's firing GP, or if you're firing AP, there is a modifier, -1 for open, -3 for closed sheath. So let's take this and kind of do this out. So we've got a quick firing 25 pounder taking a shot at the tank. It's at a range of 7. So if we go back over here to our guns, we look at a range of 7, puts us in our medium range for AP. All right, so it's going to be a medium range shot. And now if we look at our AP modifiers, we're in medium, so we start at 50. Target size is he's okay, he's 0. He's moving, so it's down 2, so he's down to 40. And then we have our barrage closed modifier for the sheath of -3. So now he's down -5. So all of a sudden he is now only a 25% chance of a shot for this 25 pounder to hit him over here. So what this does is effectively like smoke. It's very similar to smoke. I mean, you've got all these high explosive fragments coming in, blowing up dust, blowing up everything, and including the shells, including the HE itself, that can disrupt this direct fire that's going to come from this 25 pounder over here. So that's why we have that. It's a little bit of protection in a weird way from direct fire for anything that's within there as well. But again, they're being attacked by it, so the protection is kind of relative depending upon what you're looking at there. So that's what the barrage fire does. Now, of course, if he did not overwatch at this point, if he waited and let him move to there, of course, now he's out of the sheath, that would not apply, and he would just get the -2, and he'd have a better chance of hitting the tank as they come in over there. So so that's the two things here that I wanted to show. Let's close this off. In terms of moving, in terms of barrage fire, when they're being shot at with direct fire, as well as moving within the sheath, and what that can do or can affect for the direct fire. Now let's kind of play this out a little bit, and let's have him move up one more. Yeah, let's have him move up one more like that. So let's say that just ends the turn like this. So we're going to get rid of our marker. Well, let's just move him over to the side. I shouldn't get rid of him. Move him off to the side here, and let's say we end the turn. Now the sheath itself, that marker will actually still exist out here. Okay, it will still mark it out here, even though we're not attacking with it or doing anything with it. We've just come to the end of the turn, so there's no attacking or there's no movement or anything. But it stays out here while the indirect fire is here. And this brings up some of the other aspects of called-in fire. One of them, or two of the, well, 3 of them, I should say, all 3 of them in terms of what we can do with this marker on our next turn. We've actually called in this fire. So the batteries way back in the distance know and have fired at this. So that's what they're ranged in on right now, is this particular location right here. So we'll leave this marker out here for the next turn, because in the next turn what we can do is we can either continue the fire, we can adjust the fire, or we can check the fire. All right. So let's talk about those. So continuing the fire is just what it means there. You can now shoot at this hex again automatically. Meaning in the next indirect fire phase of that turn, this hex is automatically targeted. You will not have to roll a indirect fire response. It's, as I said, they've already targeted this in there. They know where to shoot. They're just going to shoot. So they can keep shooting at this without needing to roll for another modification over here. You can also change from smoke or general purpose to smoke. So we could actually change that over to smoke, again, as part of the continuous fire. All right. So as long as that stays right there, you can just pound away at that, you know, as much as you want with called in fire. Now the other thing that we can do is adjust this fire. So now in this case, our tank has moved. So he's actually now out of range. You know, our sheaf is back here in this area. He's out of range. What we can do is adjust this, and the forward observer here can actually move this or walk this fire 1, 2, 3 hexes. The maximum is 3 hexes for called in fire, and actually move it over here. Now when this happens, you do have to roll on your response here again, and this time you will get a modifier, a +1 for the adjusted fire. All right. So what that's going to do is actually, now make it, 1 becomes a 2, 2 becomes a 3, so forth and so on across here. So when we do that with our fire like this, what happens is that this comes in. We have to potentially roll. Now we're a forward observer, and we're attached. So really, what's going to happen is a 1 becomes a 2, and it's going to that's going to be that's the only way we'll get a miss. 2 becomes a 3, which is greater than, and we'll be okay. Okay. Now, just for the sake of argument, let's say we didn't adjust, but this was on here like this. One of the things I want to highlight here too is the fact that an unmodified 1 is a no response or is a danger close if spotted friendly units are within 5 target hexes. So in this case, if we actually fired this and got an unmodified 1, that means we've got danger close fire because we have units that are within 5 hexes here and here of this unit. And what that means is there's the potential for us to cause damage to our own troops. It's a friendly fire incident where the closeness of our troops, means that we could hit them and potentially do some damage. So if this does roll a 1 like this, and we do have units that's within that range for friendly fire, then unmodified 1 will get a danger close result. So what does that mean when we have danger close? Well, what happens is that the artillery impact is actually moved at the other player's discretion, or if you're playing solo, just a random roll, to one of those units that are in the danger close. So he could potentially reposition this on our quick firing artillery, our 25 pounder over here, and now that has to be resolved against him as well as the forward observer up here because this is now hit right on top of them. So you want to be careful with your units if you get in a close range like this, that if you roll a unmodified 1, you've got a potential problem for these units over here. Okay, that's the danger close effect that I was talking about over here. So that's the danger close. But as I said, with our called fire activities, continuous, we can either continue with it or we can adjust it like we have, or we can check it, meaning that we can stop the artillery. And what does that mean? Well, a checked artillery, let's just say this was positioned back at our original hex over here. Let's say we wanted to stop this artillery and we had another valuable target someplace else. Well, this artillery is here and is going to fire into this hex until we check it or stop it. So what we do is during our indirect fire, we say, okay, we're going to stop this. We actually remove the artillery impact at this point. We're actually going to delete it and take it off, meaning that has been checked. Now I can't do any other impact with that particular artillery. So in this case, our our light batteries that was assigned to us, they cannot shoot at anything else. They have to wait till the next turn to actually shoot at something. So they don't do anything. Now, our forward observer, and this is another thing I want to bring forward as well that I left out from last time, our forward observer, because their nature is a forward observer, potentially could target another battery if we had one, or an offboard or an onboard artillery to actually shoot indirectly if it wanted to. So if I had another 25-pounder sitting somewhere over here, he could actually use that to shoot there as well. But that original one that was checked as part of not shooting or not adjusting for that turn cannot do anything. Okay, and that's what they call checking their artillery. Now you must do that. The way that the process will work is that that impact will stay out there until it is checked. So in other words, you could still continue to fire over there, or it would be checked. Now, of course, if you left it right there, nothing moved into the hex or nothing was underneath the artillery, obviously you don't do any attacks, but it would still stay out there until you check it or you adjust it out there. You don't remove the artillery just because it has fired that particular turn. It stays out there until it is checked. So that's an important safety feature with that too. Okay, so the last piece I wanted to talk about here is planned fire. A little bit different than what we've seen. We've seen here has been some sort of on-call fire where we've had a forward observer out here, and they are directing the fire and resolving the fire on the board itself. Planned fire is a little different, a lot like some other games where you actually, prior to the scenario start, you actually write down hexes that are going to be points of impact for that initial artillery on a specific turn. So in other words, you write down on turn 1, there will be GP fire on hex 32Z5. It'll be GP, it's going to be a closed sheaf, and that'll come in right here. And if there's any units under it, we'll attack it. And then you'll write turn 2 and turn 3 and turn 4 and turn 5 and so forth, so on down the line, much like you do with other things. Now, a couple things about planned artillery is they can only go for 5 continuous turns. After 5, they're automatically checked. And they will stop firing, and then you could replot them in the future after that. But they are planned at the very beginning, and then they only go for 5 turns. They've got to be checked, and then they can be plotted for other things afterwards. Now, again, all the plotting happens before the game begins. You don't actually plot while the game is in progress unless there's some special rules for the artillery. So all that's done beforehand and is attempting to simulate that planned barrage that's going to come in before an attack, before a unit or units actually move up and attack the enemy. So that's our planned attack. And then the last piece I wanted to talk about is pre-designated spots, pre-designated hexes on the board for artillery. Now what this does is, and I'll just use victory hex markers to mark them. This allows you to, on the board, place markers where you're not going to place markers, you're actually going to write these down, I should say, where you want artillery to have preset or pre-targeted these hexes. They've either been ranged in by the fact that they fired a shell over there and the observer was watching and the shell landed there and they know exactly where it is. So these are basically work that's been done before the battle by typically a forward observer and the artillery batteries to designate hexes that are going to be automatically targeted. What this does is allows us on our response roll to gather a +2 dice roll modifier to the roll itself. So if we had forward observer with attached artillery, pretty much automatically we can use it in a pre-designated hex with the artillery. And those can be as many as these as you want. Usually they're scenario specific, and there's not too many of them. Usually 1, 2, 3 hexes. Beyond that, it gets a little bit tougher. Realistically, it gets a little bit tougher for the artillery units to remember and to be able to automatically adjust to these as well. So these can be useful as well to put out there for hexes that the enemy is going to come down, like a road or a particular geographical feature like the scrub hexes or the stone hexes or something like that. So just another nice thing to be able to use with that. And again, you're going to be scenario specific in terms of how it's used. So that's a little bit of, or that's actually the rest of, I should say, the advanced features of our artillery barrages and our indirect fire based upon the artillery that it's firing. Hopefully you enjoy this. Like I said, I'll probably do one more on the optional rules just to give you a flavor of what those are. I've used those sparingly. Some I like, some I don't, but I'll kind of do that as well just to be complete with the artillery. But hopefully this will help you understand a little bit more about artillery, give you some examples of how it's used. Hopefully you like this example here with the Panzer PzIIIJ being our target for our British indirect fire for the example. So with that, I'll say thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. Love the comments. If I've made any errors, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. I take it well, so please let me know, and I will try to clean them up in the next video if you do spot one. So appreciate it. Thanks a lot.